The rich rancher came to collect a debt, but found a young widow nursing 5 children. Western Territory, late autumn of 1887, near the edge of Dry Creek Valley. The sky burned low over the prairie, a dull brass smothered in wind-blown dust. Dry weeds hissed against fence posts warped by time. Every board of the old Bishop homestead leaned as if in prayer, waiting for either a miracle or a merciful end. The wind did not carry promise, only grit and ghosts. Bo Callahan rode through it like a man carrying a storm on his back. His stallion, coal-black and restless beneath him, stirred clouds of red dust with each step. A ledger lay in his saddlebag, worn leather over pages older than most graves. He had not opened it since crossing the river, but he knew which name sat on the last line, circled twice: Bishop. The debt was real. 4 years old, but real. He slowed at the gate, or what passed for one. A limp rope strung between 2 leaning posts. Beyond it, a chicken scratched at the earth. A boy's laughter rang out, chased by a girl's yell. And then a woman's voice, calm, tired, commanding. Bo dismounted. His boots met the ground with a hollow sound. From behind the side of the barn came a woman, carrying a basket full of damp laundry. She was young, younger than he'd expected, sun-browned, lean, barefoot in the dirt. Hair tied back without care, sleeves rolled to the elbow. There were flour streaks on her apron and something fierce in her eyes. She saw him and didn't falter. "You're Callahan," she said. "I am." She set the basket down and wiped her palms on the sides of her skirt. "You've come for the land." "I've come for what's owed." Silence stretched between them, taut as barbed wire. "My husband owed you," she said. "That's not something I pretend away." "Debt's been in my family longer than your marriage," Bo answered flatly. "You want the deed?" "I want what's fair." She tilted her head, expression unreadable. "Come see what's left to claim, then." He followed her through the gate. The porch creaked beneath their steps. 2 children peeked from behind the curtain. A third clung to the leg of her dress. She didn't shoo them away. "How long until the first frost?" she asked, not looking at him. 8 days, maybe 10. "I need 7. 7 what?" 7 days to finish the harvest, to jar what's left of the beans, to fix the south window so the baby doesn't freeze in her sleep. "That's not my problem." She turned to face him, calm as a drawn bow. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for 7 days." He studied her face. The lines around her mouth were not from smiling. Her hands were cracked, knuckles red. She had the look of someone who had wrestled the land and lost more than once, but kept wrestling anyway. "Why not leave?" he asked. "Sell what's left, go east, easier living there." She glanced at the children again. They were born here, even the ones that weren't. Bo said nothing. The wind whipped at his coat. She stood tall despite it. Then he turned, without another word, and walked back to his horse. At the saddle, he paused, then called back over his shoulder. 7 days, let's see how long you last. Bye. He mounted and rode off, the hooves beating a slow, steady rhythm into the dust. Kelly Mae Bishop stood on the porch, arms crossed tight, watching him disappear into the dying light. The sky behind him bled red into gray. She whispered, more to herself than to the wind. 7 days it is. Bo Callahan did not trust what he saw. He had set up camp half a mile east of the Bishop homestead, just beyond a dry bend in the creek, where the cottonwoods grew tall and thick. From there, he could see the roof of her house through the trees, smell the smoke from her cooking fire, and hear the distant echoes of children's laughter. But he did not come close, not yet. He watched. Watched, because he needed to know if the woman was what she appeared, or just another settler using sorrow as a shield. Debt did things to people. He had seen the worst of it. Tears, lies, desperation, disguised as dignity. So he kept his distance, arms crossed over his chest, mouth set in a hard line. And he watched. Kelly Mae Bishop worked from dawn to dusk. She carried feed sacks across the yard, coughing behind her sleeve, but never slowing. She mended fences with rusted nails, milked a goat that kept kicking her bucket over, swept the porch, hauled water, all with the determined silence of someone who knew no one was coming to help. One afternoon, he saw her stop mid-task. A cart from the neighboring homestead had broken down on the trail, a wheel shattered, axle bent. An older woman stood beside it, helpless. Without hesitation, Kelly called her children. "Tom, get the rope. Lily, bring the bucket. We're helping." They left their chores and jogged to the cart. Bo narrowed his eyes. Helping someone else when you had nothing to spare? That was either foolish or holy. He had never trusted either. He watched them push and pull and laugh through the mud. When the cart finally lurched free, Kelly handed the old woman a small basket, 5 eggs and a heel of bread. "Just until you're back on your feet," she said. Bo shook his head, muttering, "Damn foolish woman, giving away what she don't have." But something about the way she smiled, genuine, tired, unashamed, sat uncomfortably in his chest. That evening, voices drifted from the bishop porch. He had settled behind a tree, pretending not to listen, but the wind carried everything. Someone asked, "That man riding past, he the one from the Callahan Ranch?" Kelly's voice answered, steady, "He's doing his job, not here to be liked." "You ain't scared?" "No." A pause. "Men who keep their word don't scare me." Bo didn't breathe for a moment. He had come expecting curses, excuses, fear. Instead, she had met him at the gate and spoken plain. And now, when she could have painted him a villain, she defended his silence. That night, he couldn't sleep. The fire crackled beside him, but his bedroll stayed cold. He sat up, grumbling, and scanned the land between his camp and the house. Then he saw her youngest, Rose, barefoot, skipping after a chicken. Her feet were bloodied from sharp gravel. Still, she laughed, arms flapping like wings. His jaw clenched. At first light, Kelly opened her door to find a pair of small boots resting neatly on the porch. Worn leather, but solid, clean. Her hand trembled as she picked them up. She looked toward the tree line and saw nothing. She didn't call out, just stepped back inside, pressing the boots to her chest. That same morning, Bo found a small bundle outside his tent. Wrapped in an old blue cloth, still warm from the hearth, was a loaf of homemade bread, cracked on top, heavy with oats, nothing else. No note. He squatted beside the fire, unwrapped it, sniffed once. Then he sat down and tore off a piece, chewing slow. He didn't smile. But something in his chest, tight and long forgotten, shifted. She hadn't said thank you. She didn't have to. The morning sun was sharp and white, already hot despite the early hour. Kelly May walked the fence line, with 3 of the children trailing behind her, a hammer in one hand and a bucket of rusty nails swinging from the other. The fence had split during the last windstorm, and the cows had started nosing their way toward the creek. She couldn't afford to lose a single one. "Lily, hold the nails. Thomas, watch Rose. Rose, stay out of the tall grass," she called, already winded from the heat and the weight of the hammer. Rose, ever the explorer, twirled behind her with a stick, pretending it was a sword. Kelly knelt beside a crooked post, placing a new board across the gap. Her knees pressed into the dry earth, and she reached for the hammer, her body casting a long shadow in the morning light. That was when she heard it, a dry, sickening rattle. She froze. The sound came from the grass barely a foot to her left. "Kids," she said quietly, eyes locked on the wavering green. "Don't move." But it was too late. Rose screamed. Kelly turned just in time to see the rattlesnake surge forward, scales flashing, mouth wide. The sound of the rattle mixed with the scream, then the sound of hooves, fast, pounding the earth. A gunshot cracked the air. Kelly flinched as the snake's head exploded inches from her boot. She stumbled backward, falling hard on the dirt, heart hammering in her ears. Bo Callahan sat astride his black gelding, rifle still smoking. He dismounted in one swift motion, boots crunching the gravel as he strode toward her. For a split second, the only sound was Kelly's ragged breath, and the startled whimpering of the children behind her. He reached out a hand. She took it without thinking. His grip was strong, steady, pulling her to her feet in one clean motion. Her legs buckled slightly beneath her. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, maybe two, there was no land between them, no debt, no bitterness, just fear, relief, the rush of survival, the weight of what almost was. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice low and clipped. Kelly nodded but couldn't speak. His gaze shifted to the children, checking each face quickly, efficiently. Then, he reached behind his belt and pulled out a small hunting knife. "Take this," he said, offering the handle. "Next time, don't crouch down before checking where your damn knees are landing." Kelly blinked, then laughed, just a little. She took the knife. "Thank you," she said softly. Bo grunted something unintelligible and turned away, mounting his horse in one fluid motion. He tipped his hat once and rode off without another word. Kelly stood in the sunlight, still clutching the knife, watching the black horse vanish into the golden horizon. Dust followed him like a second shadow. The children crowded around her, eyes wide. "Was that Mr. Callahan?" Lily asked, breathless. Kelly nodded. "Yes." "He saved you," Rose whispered. Kelly looked at the remains of the snake, then down at the knife in her hand. She thought of the way his hand had felt, rough and warm, and how his eyes had held something more than judgment for the first time. "He did," she murmured. And for the first time since the debt collector had come riding down her road, she felt the ground beneath her feet shift, just a little. The wind began as a whisper, low, moaning through the sagebrush and brittle fence slats. By nightfall, it had become a scream. The storm rolled in without mercy. Clouds like bruises bruised the moon, and lightning split the sky with a crack so sharp it made Rose cry out. The roof shook. Rafters creaked. Inside the small kitchen, Kelly held all 5 children close on the floor. Blankets tucked around their shoulders. A candle flickered on the hearth, shadows dancing on the walls. "It's all right," she murmured, rocking gently. "Storms don't last." But the wind slammed against the house like fists. Outside, something heavy crashed. Maybe the feed barrel, maybe the henhouse roof. Thomas whimpered, "Mama, the goats." Kelly kissed the top of his head. "They'll hunker down, like us." Thunder rattled the glass. Rain lashed sideways, seeping through the window cracks. Somewhere out in the dark, wood splintered. She stood. Her heart felt like it had been dropped in a tin bucket. "I'll check the barn," she said, pulling on her shawl. "Mama, don't go." "I won't be long." She forced a smile, then stepped out. The yard was a blur of wind and water. Kelly staggered forward, shielding her face, her dress soaked in seconds. She reached the barn. Half the roof had peeled off like an old onion skin. Feed bags tumbled in the mud. The animals bawled in panic. Then she heard it, hammering. Hard, fast. Kelly turned toward the sound. There, atop the ladder against her house, Bo Callahan stood in the rain, nailing down the roof slats one by one, his shirt torn across the shoulder, blood mixing with the downpour on his arm. He worked like the devil was chasing him, hat lost, hair slicked to his skull, lips set in a line of pure grit. She stood frozen. Water soaked her shoes, lightning framed him in silhouette. He didn't look at her, didn't say a word. Just drove another nail. Another. And another. She approached slowly, half in awe, half in disbelief. "Bo, what are you?" He cut her off with a glance sharp enough to slice silence. "Get inside," he growled, "before you catch your death." "I thought you were." He hammered again. "Storm didn't care what I was." The wind surged. A loose plank slapped against the house. Bo caught it with his bare hand, cursed under his breath, and wedged it back into place. Kelly stepped closer, mouth open to say more, but the look on his face told her not to. So she waited. Watched. When he finally climbed down, soaked and shaking, he tossed the hammer to the ground and leaned against the porch post. His chest heaved, blood leaked from a long gash across his palm, his boots squished. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "I don't want you dying before you pay me back." Then he walked off into the rain, disappearing into the black like he'd come from it. Kelly stood in the doorway, thunder curling behind her. She pressed a hand to her mouth, unsure if she wanted to laugh or cry. Behind her, Lily whispered, "Was that Mr. Callahan?" Kelly didn't answer. Because deep down, something else had been nailed into place that night, and it wasn't just the roof. It started with whispers. A few murmured words passed over sacks of flour, behind church pews, beneath the breath of bored women leaning over fence posts. Then came the sideways glances, the raised brows, the half-laughs that carried more venom than mirth. Gave her husband to the grave and set her sights on the next wallet. Widow Bishop knows how to keep a man close, debt or not. 3 kids, 2 strays, and now a Callahan at her door. That woman knows how to catch what ain't hers. Kelly heard none of it at first. She was too busy tending to the field, mending the barn door that still hung crooked from the storm, and calming the baby who wailed through the cold snap that followed the rain. But children hear what grown-ups pretend to whisper. Lily came home with red around her eyes and dirt on her dress. She dropped her school books hard on the kitchen table and didn't speak. Kelly glanced up from the stove. "Lily?" The girl shrugged. "What happened?" "Nothing." Kelly wiped her hands and knelt beside her. "Baby, you do not slam books unless something's happened. They said you're a whore." The room went still. Even the kettle on the stove seemed to quiet. "Who said that?" Lily wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Some boys at school. They said you're letting that man stay here so he won't take the land. That you do. Things." Kelly felt her stomach turn cold, but her voice remained steady. "You know that is not true." "I know," Lily whispered, "but it still hurts." Kelly pulled her daughter close, arms tight. "Let them talk. We hold our heads up, that's all we've got." But across town, in a place where words carried fists instead of prayer, the rumor took another form. The saloon smelled of sweat, liquor, and late harvest dust. Cards slapped onto tables, laughter echoed in the rafters. Men spoke loud to be heard over one another, until someone mentioned the Bishop woman. "I'd stick around too if I had her cooking me stew and warming my bed," one man said. "Hell, she's probably paying him back in more ways than corn." The words weren't clever. They weren't even original. But they were loud enough. The doors banged open. Bo Callahan stepped in, rain still clinging to his coat like bad temper. He walked past the bar, past the games, past the man still chuckling. Then he turned. Without a word, without pause, Bo drove his fist into the man's face. The crack was sharp. The man toppled backward, chair splintering beneath him. Silence swallowed the room. No one moved, no one dared. Bo stood over him, breathing hard, one hand still clenched, the other resting on the butt of his revolver, though he never drew it. From behind the bar, a voice asked cautiously, "What the hell was that for, Callahan?" Bo's eyes didn't leave the man on the floor. "She's got 5 mouths to feed, and no reason left to trust a damn soul," he said, voice low, clear. "And somehow, she's still decent." No one replied. He turned toward the door, then added over his shoulder, almost like an afterthought, "She makes me remember I used to be decent too. She makes me remember I used to be decent." Then he walked out, dust still settling behind his boots, and did not look back. The days grew shorter. Frost kissed the morning grass, and the chickens laid fewer eggs. Kelly's pantry was down to beans and borrowed hope. Still, the rhythm of survival beat steady, until the day it broke. Tom, her second oldest, had taken the wagon pony into town with a basket of eggs to barter. It was a short ride, safe usually. He had done it before. But that evening, he came walking back, alone, covered in dust, tears streaked across his cheeks. "The pony!" He fell. Tom gasped. "His legs hurt real bad, Mama. I couldn't get him up." Kelly ran. She followed the trail through the lower pasture, up toward the ridgeline where the path turned rocky. There, in a patch of gravel, lay the small brown gelding, legs tucked awkward, flank heaving with pain. One look was enough. The foreleg was twisted, blood at the fetlock, the hoof split at the edge. She sank to her knees, cupping the pony's face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry." Tom stood nearby, sniffling, clutching the empty basket. "We can't afford Doc Rayner," Lily said softly behind her. Kelly nodded. "I know." They sat with the pony until dark fell full. That night, Kelly couldn't sleep. She lay by the hearth, the baby curled in her arms, and stared into the flickering light like it held answers. She hated herself for crying, hated how the world kept testing them just when they had nothing left to give. Bo had said 7 days. This was day 5. Out by the creek, Bo did not sleep either. He had seen the boy return alone, seen Kelly run, and he had followed, unseen. He had watched her cradle the pony's head like a child's. That image stayed with him long into the night. Long enough that he packed a saddlebag with what he had, mounted up, and rode. The trail to town was rough, winding, and frozen in spots. He did not stop. 30 miles, 3 near falls, 1 bruised shoulder from a low-hanging branch. By the time he reached the edge of town, dawn was bleeding over the hills. He hammered on the side door of the blacksmith's before it opened. "What kind of idiot needs shoeing gear before breakfast?" the smith grumbled. Bo didn't answer, just dropped coins into the man's hand and pointed to the shelves. By sunrise, he was back on Bishop land. Kelly woke to the sound of something being placed on the porch. She opened the door slowly, expecting trouble. What she found was a bundle, wrapped tight in burlap, tied with twine. Inside, a tin of salve, a vial of laudanum, a roll of clean bandages, and 4 small iron horseshoes. Tucked on top, a note, scrawled in dark, direct handwriting. "Next time, do not be so damn stupid." She stared at the words, then smiled. A small, crooked thing, but real. Tom ran to her side, peeking into the bundle. "Mama, he brought medicine." Lily lifted the shoes. "For Brownie?" Kelly nodded slowly. "For Brownie." Rose clapped her hands. "He's gonna live. The pony's gonna live." Kelly knelt down beside the package. She touched the note again, then folded it and slipped it into her apron pocket like a secret. She did not look toward the creek, but her heart did. Out there, somewhere, a man who refused thanks had done what no one else would. And she would remember, even if he never spoke of it again. The moon hung low, swollen and yellow like an old bruise. The night air was sharp with the scent of frost and smoke from a dying fire. Coyotes cried in the distance, a low, lonely chorus echoing off the hills. Inside the Bishop house, the children slept close together under quilts patched by time and necessity, limbs tangled like roots searching for warmth. The walls creaked, the kind of sound you only noticed when the world outside went quiet in the wrong kind of way. Kelly sat by the stove, stitching the shoulder seam of Tom's only coat. The needle trembled once in her fingers. She told herself it was the cold. Then the sound came, not the wind, not an animal, footsteps, slow, heavy, confident. Then voices, too loud, too rough, the kind that didn't belong to decent men, the kind she hadn't heard since before Henry died, the kind that meant trouble. She rose, heart pounding a hard, ugly rhythm, and crossed to the window. 3 men, dirty coats, long guns. One had a scar from temple to jaw. The other 2 looked hungrier than they did angry. They were already at the barn. Kelly's mind snapped into place like a trap sprung shut. She didn't allow herself time to think. She rushed to the children, her voice a whisper but sharp as a blade. "Go! Into the crawl space. Now! Don't make a sound." Lily didn't hesitate. She gathered the little ones, pushing them toward the loose board under the stairs. Kelly kissed the top of Rose's head before she turned. Then she ran to the back door, only to find one of the men already there. "Well now," he said, grinning with rotted teeth. "Evenin', miss." She didn't answer, just grabbed the broom like a rifle, knuckles white. "You need to leave," she said. "We're just here for a few cows," he said, stepping closer. Heard you've had some luck lately. Callahan money, Callahan visits. Looks like the Bishop place is on the rise again. I got nothing for you. Don't lie to me, he said, and shoved the door open. She swung. The broom cracked against his arm. He cursed, staggered, but another man grabbed her from behind. She screamed, kicking, clawing, but it was like wrestling a tree root, strong, unrelenting. They dragged her into the yard, hands tied with a horse bridle, rough and soaked with old sweat. Behind her, the children screamed, "Mama! Bo!" The name cut through the night like a bell struck hard. Then, hoofbeats, fast, angry, beautiful. A gunshot tore the air apart. The man holding her stumbled back, a dark flower blooming red across his chest. Another shot. A second man dropped near the barn, crumpled like a scarecrow without strings. The third ran, but not fast enough. Bo Callahan rode into the yard like something conjured, black hat low, revolver still smoking. He didn't wait for the horse to stop. He leapt from the saddle, boots hitting the earth with thunder. "Get them inside," he barked, eyes scanning for threats. Kelly scrambled to her feet, arms still bound. Lily was already pulling the younger ones into the house, sobbing and barefoot. Kelly turned to run, but movement caught the corner of her eye. The last thief, wounded but not dead, rose behind a fence post, shotgun shaking in his hands. He fired. The blast knocked Bo sideways, his body twisting in the air before hitting the ground with a dull thud. Kelly screamed, her voice ragged with terror. She ran, feet slipping in the churned dirt, fell, crawled. Her hands found his chest, hot and wet with blood. Bo, stay with me." His eyes fluttered. "You idiot," she choked. "You stupid, stubborn, wonderful man. Why did you come back?" "Figured I owed you one," he rasped, lips cracked. "Don't die," she begged. "Please, I never got to say." He lifted a trembling hand, pressed 2 fingers to her lips. "Then don't," he whispered. "Just live. That's all I want." Her tears fell fast now, dripping from her chin into the dirt between them. "You can't leave us." "I won't," he said. "Not if you tell me to stay." She nodded, both hands cupping his face now. "Stay, damn you." He smiled through the pain, a real one this time. Behind them the barn smoked. Somewhere, a cow bellowed. The night held its breath. And in the middle of it all, between fire and silence, between grief and hope, something sacred took root. Fragile, beautiful, real. Bo stayed long enough to survive. The bullet wound in his shoulder didn't kill him, though the fever tried its best. Kelly sat beside his bed the first 2 nights, wiping sweat from his brow, listening to him murmur half-sentences about snow, shadows, and a woman who made bread like memory. But on the 3rd morning, he was gone. Left before sunrise, no note. Only a folded blanket, a used bandage, and the faint scent of tobacco on the pillow. Kelly stood at the door long after the light broke, one hand resting on the frame. The wind carried no hoofbeats, no sign of where he had gone, except the direction she already knew, south. Back to Callahan land. She did not chase him. Not then. A month passed. The land began to soften again. The cold relented. Chickens started laying better. The pantry filled slowly. No new disasters came, but something else was missing. Something quiet. And tall. And too proud to admit it had cared. Kelly worked harder than ever, but she laughed less. The children noticed. Rose asked once, "Mama, is Mr. Bo gone for good?" Kelly only smiled, touched her daughter's hair, and said nothing. Because, what could she say? She had watched him bleed for her. She had kissed his forehead while he lay unconscious. She had memorized the weight of his hand in hers, and still, she had let him go. Not because she did not want him, but because a part of her still felt bound to a man buried 4 years deep. And maybe Bo deserved someone freer than that. Then came the wagon. It arrived just after dawn. Dusty, creaking, pulled by 2 draft horses. The driver handed Kelly a clipboard and tipped his hat. "Delivery from Callahan Ranch, ma'am." She stared. In the back of the wagon stood 5 young colts. Each wore a handmade halter, and on each halter, a nameplate carved into smooth wood: Lily, Tom, Rose, Nora, Sam. Kelly's breath caught in her throat. There was a wooden crate beside the gate. Inside, grooming brushes, feed, 5 child-sized saddles, and a folded letter sealed with wax. She broke the seal with trembling fingers. The handwriting was slanted, deliberate. If you can love 5 children not born of your blood, then surely you can forgive the woman who raised them. I do not want land. I want a roof that leaks sometimes, and bread that burns once in a while. I want laughter. Yours. If home is where the light stays on, I'll keep the lantern lit. Kelly sank to her knees beside the crate. The children rushed out, shrieking with joy at the sight of the colts. "Mama, they've got our names. Can we ride them? Where did they come from?" But Kelly could not speak. She just held the letter to her chest, eyes closed, tears streaking clean lines down her dirt-smudged face. Later that afternoon, she saddled one of the colts' Lilies and tied back her hair. "You watch them," she told her eldest daughter. "I'll be back before dark." No one asked where she was going. They already knew. Kelly rode across the ridge, sun at her back, heart pounding like hooves against dry earth. She crested the final hill just as the wind picked up. Below, the Callahan Ranch spread wide fences mended, fields full, and at the edge of the barn, Bo stood. He turned before she could call out, as if he had been waiting, watching, counting heartbeats. Their eyes met again, but this time he did not turn away. She slid off the colt and walked toward him. He didn't move. When she reached him, they stood in silence for a breath, then another. Then, softly, she said, "I want burnt bread and broken fences, and someone who fixes roofs without asking." Bo smiled, small, crooked, real. "Then stay." He opened his arms, and in the middle of that wide, wild land, Kelly walked into them. The wind carried no more sorrow, only the scent of spring, and the first kiss late, but finally true. Sometimes, the wildest lands grow the gentlest hearts. Kelly May didn't find salvation in a miracle. She found it in a man who fixed roofs without asking, and in the kind of love that doesn't knock, it builds. And Bo Callahan? He came to collect a debt, but left with a home. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that love doesn't always come loud, but it always comes honest, then don't just ride on by. Hit that like button, share the story, and make sure you're subscribed to Wild West Love Stories for more tales of longing, grit, and the kind of romance that doesn't fade with time. Until next time,